He ordered rare steak. That was all. Nothing extravagant. Just a rare steak, as bloody as they could make it. That's what Chris Blackwood said when the gray-skinned waiter with too many arms asked for his preference. It was meant to be a celebration. A quiet evening at the Stella Palette. The kind of place that catered to elites from every star sector, known for meals so exotic they made reputations. He just finished a job. A dangerous one. The kind that leaves scars and deposits. Large sums into quiet accounts. And for once, he let himself unwind. The place shimmered with wealth. Crystalline lights hummed above meteorite-polished tables. Conversations floated in alien dialects, interspersed with laughter, hisses, and static bursts. A symphony of species, each indulging in luxury. Chris, beneath his jacket, still wore his armor plates, a habit. Old instincts weren't shed by contract payments. In this galaxy, safety was an illusion, and illusions got people killed. So when the waiter returned, not with a plate, but with 2 guards and a chained woman, whose skin glowed soft blue under the lights, Chris didn't blink. Not outwardly, but inside, every nerve screamed. She wasn't food. She was alive, terrified, and very much aware of what was about to happen. "Your fresh serving, sir," the waiter said, pride flickering in his alien expression. "What do you like?" The preparation demonstrated at the table. A show, perhaps? Chris didn't move. He simply smiled, slow and controlled, masking his outrage behind the kind of calm born from surviving too many war zones. "That won't be necessary," he said, and in that moment the decision was made. There would be no dinner, no quiet celebration, no peaceful night. There would be rescue. There would be a reckoning, because the line had been crossed, not just between cultures or cuisine, but between civility and savagery, and humans, for all their history, their violence, their blood. They knew something the galaxy still hadn't learned. Some things you don't do. Some lines you never, ever cross. Her name was Seisha. She said it in a whisper so soft, only he could hear. The chains around her wrists rattled as she moved. Slightly, unsure whether the man seated beside her would choose to be her savior, or her butcher. Her eyes pleaded, but her voice barely trembled. There was dignity behind the desperation, strength wrapped in fear. She was used to performing, not begging. But this wasn't a performance. This was survival. Chris leaned close, speaking in tones meant for her alone. "I'm not going to eat you," he said. "Humans don't consume sentient beings." A pause. Not the decent ones. Relief flickered across her face like starlight on water. She nodded once, and he saw the first hint of trust form in her eyes. He played his part well. To the staff, he looked like a man satisfied with his order, inspecting his meal before taking it to go. The waiter protested, mumbling something about freshness policies. Chris slid his credit chip across the table with a number so high it shut down. Further discussion. He didn't blink. Just smiled that same smooth smile that had bought him time and space on 100 dangerous planets. Outside, the speeder awaited, and with every step toward it, the tension coiled tighter in his muscles. The guards didn't move. Why would? He'd paid. And in this galaxy, currency outranked morality every single time. Inside the vehicle, with the neon lights of New Singapore streaking past like cosmic rain, he freed her. A small tool, a flick of the wrist. Chains fell. Her hands were bruised, her ankles swollen, but her eyes, they were clear. Grateful, alive. "They'll come after us," she said, her voice stronger now. "The restaurant is run by the Crimson Syndicate." Chris only smiled, as if someone had just told him dessert was late. "Good," he said. "I specialize in security." He hit the throttle, and the city blurred. Behind them, pursuit vehicles peeled off from traffic. Syndicate Black. High speed, high threat, but none of it made him flinch. In another life, Chris might have been a pirate or a bounty hunter. In this one, he was something worse, someone with purpose. And tonight, that purpose was wrapped in blue skin and stolen dignity. He dropped the speeder into the lower levels of the city, engines screaming as they descended into the metal labyrinth below the light. Shaisha didn't scream. She didn't even gasp. She just gripped her harness and watched him with something like wonder. "I'm screaming internally," she said, laughing despite herself. Chris grinned. He lived for this. The chase. The cause. The company dot, and with each evasive turn, with each decision made in fractions of a second, a strange thing happened. The hunted became something more, and the rescue began to feel a lot like fate. They lost the first wave in the tunnels. It wasn't luck. Chris knew these underpaths like muscle memory. Old jobs, old escapes, favors paid in blood and speed. He took turns that only madmen and ghosts remembered. And by the time they emerged into the industrial sectors, the sky above them was empty of syndicate fangs. Sasha studied him, no longer just watching for safety, but for something deeper. A curiosity, maybe even hope. "I was a dancer," she said, the quiet words carried by the hum of the engine. "Nova Prime. They said they wanted entertainment for high-end clients. Next thing I knew, I was in a cage, being seasoned." Chris said nothing, but his jaw clenched hard enough to make his teeth ache. There was nothing elegant about rage, nothing noble about fury. But when wielded for someone else, it became something almost holy. "You know," she said, voice softer, "most humans would have just walked away." He met her gaze, unwavering. "Some things aren't cultural differences. Some things are just wrong." And there it was. The truth that few ever said aloud in galactic society. For all the talk of diversity and respect, there were still lines that couldn't be excused by alien customs. Sentience wasn't the flavor. Dignity wasn't a garnish, especially not to him. They reached the safe house, a hollowed-out shell of a warehouse from a forgotten era, but inside, it breathed like a war room. Consoles glowed, systems hummed, and Chris transformed. Not the charming stranger from a restaurant table, not the driver with death on his tail, but something older, something built for mission and grit. Sasha, now dressed in a borrowed flight suit, hovered beside him, watching his fingers dance across interfaces most beings couldn't even decipher. "You're not just a security specialist," she said. Chris only smirked. "Let's just say I've worn more than one hat. Rescuing blue-skinned women wasn't on the resume?" "Not until tonight," he said. "I still locked on encrypted data streams. Something didn't add up. That restaurant, the Stellar Palette, wasn't just for the wealthy. It catered to planetary elites, the kind who knew which laws they were breaking and had enough power to reshape them afterward." And as he dug deeper, as he followed the digital trail through hidden accounts and backdoor transmissions, a name emerged. Commissioner Calthax, head of planetary security. The very system meant to protect was feeding the machine. Chris looked up. Sasha's face was pale. "I heard them talking," she whispered. "The manager always mentioned the commissioner. They kept a private room ready for him." Chris stood. His posture was steel. His voice was colder than the stars outside. "This goes higher than I thought." And now it wasn't just about rescue. It was about exposing the lie, burning it from the inside out. Because if power had decided that sapient beings could be bought, sold, and served, then power was about to learn what a furious human and a liberated captive could really do together. The press conference came first. Not theirs. His. Calthax stood beneath the shimmering banners of planetary law, forked tongue flicking between words, painting humans as threats, aggressors, barbarians. A doctored video of Chris at the restaurant spun lies into polished propaganda. They called it a kidnapping, called her property, called him a danger to society. Chris didn't flinch. He'd seen this before. When systems rot, they always scream louder at the ones holding up mirrors. But what they didn't know, what Calfax had failed to account for, was that Sosha wasn't just a victim. She was a witness, a survivor. And she carried more than testimony. She carried evidence. Project Harvest. That was the name buried in encrypted files behind restaurant menus and false ledgers. The experiments weren't just culinary curiosities. They were testing labs, genetic manipulation facilities. Doses called flavor enhancers were, in truth, mutation triggers, designed not just to make sentients taste better, but to make them compatible. They weren't seasoning meals. They were preparing breeding stock. Chris read it all, his blood growing colder with each decrypted line. Cross-species compatibility, neural compliance, hybrid viability. They weren't creating food. They were creating a future. Sasha said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, she placed a hand over her stomach. You think, I might already be, well, check, Chris said, though the answer sat between them like gravity. If it were true, then she was no longer just a victim or a witness. She was proof. And in a galaxy that only respected power, proof had to be protected at all costs. Because now, it wasn't just a mission. It was family. They couldn't run, not anymore. The story had become too large, the truth too urgent. If they stayed hidden, the syndicate would rewrite history. If they disappeared, the narrative would rot under someone else's version of the facts. So they planned something bold. Not an escape. An infiltration. The Bioangela, a decadent celebration of pharmaceutical breakthroughs, hosted by the very corporation that funded Project Harvest. Underneath its golden chandeliers, data flowed freely. Secure servers held the secrets they needed. Genetic maps, experiment logs, breeding trials, and amidst the nobles and executives, Chris and Sasha walked in like whispers dressed in silk. He wore a suit. She wore grace woven in silver. Together, they were elegance wrapped around fury. They danced, close, as security swept the crowd. He held her like she was made of fire. She smiled like she knew they'd make it. And when she whispered, "There, coming," he didn't panic. He acted. From dance to detour, from charm to chaos. The guards never saw it coming. Elevators bypassed. Biometric locks fooled. Inside the basement labs, they found everything. Records, prisoners, evidence, and horror. Holding cells filled with others like Sasha, species from across the stars. All chosen for their biological potential. They didn't hesitate. Chris downloaded files. Sasha freed the captives. And when the alarm screamed through the walls, they didn't flee alone. They led a liberation. Because survival means nothing when freedom's still in chains. The escape wasn't clean. Nothing worth doing ever is. But it was enough. They vanished. Beneath the city, trailed by whispers and carried by hope. In Chris's hidden safe house, the freed were processed, healed, hidden. The data, proof of everything, was secured. But the truth had a price. The genetic scans came back. Sasha was changing. The enhancements had worked. Her DNA had begun to merge with human compatibility profiles. She wasn't just a bridge. She was the prototype. And within her, a child. Chris sat in silence as the weight of it landed. He was going to be a father. Not just to a life, but to a symbol. A being the galaxy would either fear or revere. Proof that interspecies unity wasn't a myth, but a heartbeat. She reached for his hand. "You didn't just save me," she said. "You showed me what it means to be human. What it means to choose love when survival is easier." He kissed her softly. "I choose you. Every time." And outside, the stars spun in silence, waiting to see what they would choose next. Calthax moved fast. The council, too. Emergency declarations, accusations of genetic terrorism. They released more footage, false narratives. Claimed Chris and Seisha were attempting to breed a new species for conquest. It was absurd. But fear doesn't need truth. It only needs a seed. So Chris made a choice. No more running. No more hiding. They would bring the truth to Earth. A contact within the embassy agreed. The evidence would be reviewed by human command. If the data held, and it did, Earth Force would demand action. But before they could reach the embassy, an ambush fell from the sky. Calthax himself led the strike team. They fought through steel and fire. Seisha by his side, her movements sharper than ever. The child inside her was affecting more than biology. Her instincts, her reflexes, they were evolving. And in the heat of battle, Chris saw what they had become, not prey, but a new force, a new family, and no amount of propaganda could stop what was coming. Medical scans at the Resistance hideout confirmed it. Accelerated development, hybrid stability, genetic viability far beyond projections. The child, Nexus, was evolving in real time. A miracle wrapped in soft tissue and luminous skin. But with it came danger. The council had already voted. Genetic segregation would be law. The child, if captured, would be classified as a biological threat. They moved fast. Earth Force responded. Diplomatic channels opened. Protests broke out across star systems. And amid it all, Nexus was born. Strong, healthy, glowing with potential. He was beautiful. Blend of his mother's color and his father's eyes. The galaxy held its breath. And Chris, watching his son wrap tiny fingers around his own, knew this wasn't just survival. This was revolution. The news spread like wildfire. A human and an alien had produced a viable offspring. Peaceful, powerful, loved. The council's walls began to crack. Allies spoke out. Hidden factions within Earth Force and beyond rallied. Across the stars, beings of every shape and color began to ask the same question. If love can exist across species, why can't peace? Chris and Seisha became symbols, unwilling but undeniable. Interviews followed. Invitations, threats, praise. All of it swirled around them like a second storm. And through it, they remained grounded, not because they were unafraid, but because they had found what mattered most. Each other. 1 month later, they finally had their dinner. No chases, no chains, no lies. Just two souls who met by mistake and chose to make that mistake mean something. As the city sparkled below, Chris lifted a glass. No surprises on the menu, he said. Seisha laughed, her hand resting gently on her stomach. Except, maybe the next one, she teased. He froze, then smiled. Seriously? Possibly, she said with a wink. And they both laughed. Because in a galaxy filled with chaos and cruelty, it had taken one wrong order to discover the most human thing of all. That love, real love, doesn't care about skin or species. It only asks one thing. Will you choose it, even when it's hard? They had, and the galaxy would never be the same.